When we map the intellectual centers of the 18th century, the focus almost always defaults to the European Enlightenment or the grand imperial courts of the Ottoman Empire. This standard historical lens leaves the African continent south of the Sahara completely dark. But if you examine the historic port city of Zeila on the Somali coast, that map falls apart. This coastal hub was the launchpad for a deep and active intellectual network. That network produced Hassan ibn Ibrahim al-Jabarti. A Somali-origin polymath, he traveled from the Horn of Africa to become the foremost scientific and religious authority in 18th century Cairo. Operating between the traditional religious authority of al-Azhar and the experimental labs of his own household, he navigated the elite social and scientific worlds of Ottoman Cairo. His documented presence at the highest levels of the Cairene intellectual world reorients the 18th century map, demonstrating high-level Somali participation in the core institutions of Islamic science. The route to Cairo began in places like Zeila. For centuries, this bustling Indian Ocean port sustained a direct corridor of scholarship and commerce, stretching right across the Red Sea into Egypt and the Hejaz. Following this established corridor, al-Jabarti's family undertook a long physical migration through the desert, eventually embedding themselves into the rigorous social fabric of Cairene life. They arrived at al-Azhar University. At the time, this was the premier institution of Islamic learning in the Arabic-speaking world, a massive campus drawing scholars from Europe to Central Asia. At al-Azhar, al-Jabarti rose to the position of Sheikh of the Riwaq al-Jabarti. A Riwaq was a dedicated residential and educational lodge, and this specific one was reserved for students migrating from the Somali and East African coast. In this role, he wielded direct legal and administrative authority, managing the survival and advanced education of the entire Somali and East African student population in Cairo. He operated as a deliberate institutional protector. His leadership anchored the East African scholarly presence right at the geographic center of global Islamic power. Beyond his administrative duties, al-Jabarti mastered what 18th century scholars called the uncommon sciences, a highly specialized cluster of disciplines including advanced mathematics, geometry, algebra, and theoretical astronomy. This Arabic astronomical manuscript in the Max Planck archives features concentric spherical diagrams mapping celestial mechanics. Archival records prove it belonged to al-Jabarti. He annotated these charts and authored 16 treatises, including a precise study of weights and measures that attracted European translators. Outside the university, his actual house functioned as a massive, privately run lending library and a bustling, active laboratory. This living room became a site for active cross-cultural exchange. Prominent Mamluk officials, al-Azhar students, and traveling West African scholars all gathered there to observe and participate in his scientific experiments. His contemporaries recognized this unique blend of skills by awarding him the title Philasuf al-Islam, the philosopher of Islam. The existence of this household laboratory shifts our understanding of 18th century Cairene society. An African scholar successfully merged deep religious devotion with elite experimental science, doing so entirely on his own terms. When al-Jabarti died in 1774, his monumental library and his strict pedagogical methods passed to his son, Abd al-Rahman, who would go on to become Cairo's most important modern historian. As this ornate French engraving shows, when European scholars from Napoleon's commission arrived in Egypt decades later to study its history and sciences, they were interacting with the robust intellectual foundation the al-Jabarti family had already established. Today, modern historical frameworks like the Identity Verification Protocol allow us to definitively trace exactly where this scientific legacy began. Look at his formal Arabic name. The relational epithet al-Zailahi explicitly connects his family provenance to the port of Zeila, while al-Jabarti designates the broader Somali coastal region of the Horn of Africa. The geography is literally written into his identity. He maintained a bridge between those coastal routes and his advanced inquiries into the mechanics of the cosmos. Hassan al-Jabarti stands as an undeniable, documented blueprint. His life serves as a permanent record that Somali intellectual agency was actively operating at the absolute highest levels of human civilization.